It's my honor to have you here, Harold Hedelman.
Stuart does really good on Haight Street. Well, I'm really pleased to introduce this segment and the crucial work of CCL's Conservative Caucus. Early on, CCL recognized the importance of engaging conservatives and Republicans in our work, and the problem is we always need more of them. And as Mark said this morning, it's a special priority this year. That's why the Conservative Caucus is really one of the most important parts of CCL as we go forward. And to me, at least, it seems that the caucus's job is really hard. There's the obvious hard part, engaging with people whose tribe, if you will, has come to be controlled by people who deny that global warming is even a problem. That's tough. That's hard enough. But then the caucus also has the problem of training the rest of us how to behave around new volunteers who are Republicans and conservatives. I know this from personal, painful experience. It was humbling when one of the Conservative Caucus members pointed out to me that I needed conservative sensitivity training. I really appreciate the training I got, and it really helps. And I think it'll be helpful for all of us as the caucus succeeds in bringing new members. And if we don't rise to that challenge, the problem will be that even though we get new conservatives and Republicans to start meeting with us, if they don't feel respected and valued, they'll leave. So how might all of us help the caucus with at least the first of these two hard jobs? I want to start by interjecting a wrinkle, perhaps a new idea into your thinking about how and why you might want to help the caucus build bipartisanship. It's an idea that has really enlarged my thinking about the role of CCL in building bipartisanship political will, and I know it has extended my ability to excite people to engage with us. The idea is from Van Jones. He's an author, a social entrepreneur, former Obama administration advisor, and his latest book is Beyond the Messy Truth, How We Came Apart and How We Came Together. How we came together, how we come together. Here's a quote summing up Van's analysis of how we came apart. The same political parties that are failing the country today, the same political and elite dynasties, they created the mess we're in today. In other words, he places the blame for the mess on bipartisanship of the elites. Now, whether or not you agree with Van's analysis, I think you'll be interested in his solution. He calls it bipartisanship from the bottom up. In other words, that's what we are doing already. And now back to our Conservative Caucus. That's their job. Bipartisanship from the bottom up is what their job is, leading CCL and helping us do that. So think for a moment about the episode of Years of Living Dangerously that we watched yesterday. Think about how the Climate Solutions Caucus came to be. J.B. Terra and CCL have a lot to be proud of in our roles in birthing that caucus. So I ask you, and raise your hand, are you proud that from the day that that caucus was born, it was designed to be bipartisan? It's bipartisan by requirement. So now I have a thought experiment. What if, to help the Conservative Caucus, we suggested to every new member of CCL that they consider finding someone of the opposite party to join with them? What if we asked each of you, each current member, to do the same? Could you do this?
Yes, that's brilliant. That's exactly what needs to happen.
Okay, so who are you going to bring in? CCL asks us to stretch in a lot of ways. We stretch by coming to meetings, coming to conferences like this, by donating $1,000 and becoming generous gentlemen and willing women, and jumping up and down on the levers of political will. It's all a stretch. So consider this thought experiment as another stretch and a challenge and a way you can help the Conservative Caucus build a national bipartisanship from the bottom up. I'm very pleased to be able to introduce you to Rob Beggs, who is one of the founding leaders and luminaries of our Conservative Caucus.
All right. Thanks, Harold. Appreciate that. So just learned a new oxymoron, and that's conservative sensitivity training. I thought that was great. I want to relate just a little story. So when I came yesterday, where's Marty? Marty Roach? Is she here still? Anyway, I ran into Marty, who is just wonderful, and she does a lot of work with the environmental justice side of things. And I said, hey, how you doing? You know, how's my favorite progressive doing? And she was going, I don't know, this is just, things are so weird and wild and all this stuff. And I'm paraphrasing some of what she said, but, you know, and she said something like, you know, why can't we get back to, you know, the respect and politeness that really is what makes us Americans? And I was going, wow, that's what a conservative would say. You know, so I think there's a lot more common ground than people, you know, than we give credit for. I think the Fox News, this is my theory, Fox News and CNN, they get more people to watch by winding people up on both sides. And I think it's our job to look through that, look to the person, whether you're recruiting new people, whether you're talking to conservative members of Congress. You know, a lot of us have the same values. There may be some different approaches and perspectives, but we want a lot of the same end results. Okay, as you know right now, the House is controlled by Republicans. The Senate, it's pretty close. 51 Republicans, but it's on the edge, and so that's kind of where things stand right now. So part of the key to getting things done is working with Republicans. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Citizens Climate Lobby. This was an internal survey. 88% left of center, 7% right of center, 5% other. And that's how we rated ourselves for the survey. The U.S. population, 36% conservative, 25% liberal, and a lot of independents. But part of the key to getting this done is working with conservatives and Republicans and libertarians. Uh-oh. It stopped working. Oh, wait. Okay, it started working again. So, if you've lost your keys on a dark street, it's easiest if they're under a street light. That would be wonderful. But odds are they're probably not. So are we looking for our keys under the street light as a metaphor for not getting more conservatives engaged? This was really surprising to me. I didn't realize this, but if you look at the two left bars there, categories, most CCL recruits are people who are alarmed or concerned about global warming. Makes sense. If you look at the reddish-orange bars there, those are people that said they were going to vote for Donald Trump. Come on. There we go. Okay. If you do the numbers, Okay, if you do the numbers, that's 5.8% of the voting population, almost 14 million people. So there's a lot of potential recruits out there for CCL that are conservative. And that's the key there. Oh, man. Hey, Tim, I'm just going to signal and let you advance them. Are you back there? Okay. So, where are all these conservatives? How do I find them? Well, I'm going to give you a few points and you know, maybe some ideas, and you come up with some of your own ideas. And you don't have to write down that huge URL. I'll give you some emails at the end. So here's one place. A lot of the outdoors groups, a lot of conservatives, they all get it. Ducks Unlimited is they totally get global warming, think it's a threat, it's a big deal. Trouts Unlimited, Autobahn, ski groups, other groups. And there are also a lot of professional people. You will find, I'm an engineer, and I think you'll probably find that like 90% of engineers get global warming and that it's a problem. And you'll probably also find that most engineers are independent or conservative. And so that's another group. If you're recruiting, you know, bring them on in. And other scientists, of course, get it too. So that's another group to approach. Local clubs, Rotary clubs are especially good because they like outside speakers. So if you can speak at a Rotary club and encourage their members to join CCL, that's a good, they tend to be probably somewhat on the conservative side, but there's a wide range of people that go to Rotary. And then reaching out to partisan groups, I've been really pleased. We've tabled at the last several Republican state conventions, and we've had really good responses. You'd be surprised how many people come by and say, wow, we're really glad to see you guys here. You know, I mean, we get a mix. We get some people just want to come up and argue, and then we get some people just go, okay. But, you know, we have a lot of people that say, we're really happy to see you here. So CAGOP, Young Americans for Liberty, we've got an arrangement with, and they're on a lot of campuses. We tabled at CPAC, and that's a big event. We've got a lot of members. And Republican Federation of Women is probably another good place. And invite one of us. You can contact me or other Conservative Caucus members in the audience if you want someone to speak with one of these groups. And we've got at least a few folks here. Everyone, Conservative Caucus, raise your hands. We've got a few of us here. There we go, 1, 2, and Tim in the back there. Yeah, so thank you, guys. Okay, and these are some ways in your chapter you might use some of these ideas. Okay. And then this has been mentioned before, there's military is another group. Veterans tend to be somewhat conservative on average, and if you can put on an event where you try to encourage veterans to come, you might gain some recruits. This was using the Burden or Tidewater, which have both been mentioned previously. In Asheville, North Carolina, Jim Tolbert did this, and he got 200 people came, and 100 of them were veterans. And he did have some help with some veterans for recruiting folks to come to this, but still, it was a big deal, and this can be successful. Okay. If you go to community, we've got a bunch of resources for communicating with conservatives, and this just shows kind of a link to that. So if you want to learn a little bit more on some of the differences and how you communicate, this is a good spot to go. So good approach. I just have a list here of several things that I kind of put together in addition to what's on community. Be genuinely happy when you meet with conservative or conservative members of Congress. You know, be happy to have the opportunity to meet with them. You're trying to develop a relationship. This isn't a I'm right, you're wrong thing. Ask questions and listen. See where they're coming from. And they really appreciate it when you listen, because then you're getting credibility as being someone that cares, you know, about what they think. Avoid tribal triggers. You know, things that are a little bit, you know, maybe would come off as exaggerations to them, you know, climate crisis, climate justice, evil oil companies, that kind of stuff. Just put that aside for now. Don't use those. Use quotes from their trusted authorities. Who would be a good trusted authority for conservatives? Ronald Reagan. Excellent. How about George Shultz? How about Teddy Roosevelt? The founding fathers, economist Milton Friedman, Frederick Hayek for libertarians. So look for quotes of people that they would respect. Be happy if you're getting objections. That's something a lot of people have trouble with. You know, if the person you're talking to starts objecting, that's good because they're engaged. If you don't get any objections, they might just be kind of blowing you off in their mind. It's like, yeah, whatever. But in sales training, they teach you objections are a good thing. That means you're getting engaged. Okay. Talk about risks. One thing, and other presenters have talked about this before, risks can be something that conservatives really do care about and look at in the big picture. And I just have, you know, one thing. What if we don't do this, fee and dividend, and the scientists are right? What does that leave for our kids and grandkids? Okay, well, what if we do this and all the scientists are wrong? Well, we've lowered how much imported oil we're bringing in, we're cleaning up the air, the economy is doing a little better, but, it's not too bad. So that's an approach. Ask for their help, what would they do? And what can we bring to the table for them? A lot of these, in business, they have to run a business, they're looking out for their brand, politicians are looking to get reelected. What can we do for them? So, in our chapters and as individuals. I'm not going to read all these, but the local effects have really become a big deal, and these are just some of them that we see in California. And this was even before the last wildfires. I put this slide together. But, we've got the jet stream that's getting a lot wonkier and doing weird things, and that's causing problems with our water resources and a lot of other things. Oroville Dam, high-intensity rain, we almost lost Oroville Dam, and the wildfires. So there's a lot to talk about that people can relate to very directly right now. So this is, you saw yesterday Utah Congresswoman Mia Love in the movie yesterday, and this was, she spoke last June. Some of you have probably seen this, but she spoke at the CCL conference, but I videoed this and I just thought it's a great little clip, so go ahead, Tim.
Take the fact that people are giving us false decisions, saying that one has to come at the detriment of the other. In other words, we should reject the fact that we say that our lands have to come at the expense of energy and vice versa. But I believe that all of us, as we come together, our energy producers, our environmentalists, moms, business owners, Americans come together to say we have a responsibility to our children. People like Mia have been working really hard to come to my office, even though she cannot vote, has come to work and tell us what we need to be doing and telling us to take responsibility for her. And the fact that she's going to be the one that is going to be inheriting this wonderful land that we live on. So these are the things that I know for a fact. And I want you to know that I, as a member of Congress, as an American, as a Republican, think it is our responsibility to work across the aisle together to get rid of partisan politics and do what's right for the American people.
Okay, and just FYI, Mia Love, she was the keynote speaker at the California Republican Convention 2 years ago. So she has been viewed as sort of a rising star in the party, and so we can do this. We've got 400 some odd members in the Conservative Caucus now. We would love to triple that. Our goal is to get a Conservative Caucus member in every chapter. So whatever you can do to recruit some, to have positive outreach with conservatives, that would just be wonderful. That's Jim Tolbert. He's on CCL staff. He's our director. And that's his email at conservatives@citizensclimate.org. Or you can also email me, begsra@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
This is still working? I'll go here. Hi, I'm Jerry Hinkle. It's been an absolute pleasure spending the last day and a half with you. So I'm going to talk about progressive outreach. I'm new to the team. I've got Nick Despota with me, who's been active as a leader on the team, and one of the takeaways from this 3 minutes or so I think I'm going to have with you is, if you're interested in progressive outreach, go ahead, Tim. Go on to community, onto the action teams, and sign up for the progressive outreach team. I think, progressives are becoming more important, and we're really going to try to expand our activity this year. So here's what I want to do with you. I want to talk a little bit about our standing in the progressive community, our policy, what our priorities are, and then how that has, what the reaction has been in the progressive community. And maybe as a result, I think we're beginning to rethink our approach and maybe looking at an adjustment to that approach or something to consider. So, nope. If you could go back. Yeah. So, CCL, climate first. When Danny used those words for the first time to me, I was moved. And we are, climate first. So, all life now and for future generations, and that's our priority. And we've designed our policy to reflect that. So we use the market because it's effective, it gets the job done, it's efficient, least cost. And we've insisted on revenue neutrality. Why? It serves the climate first priority. It gets you there sooner, right? You're more likely to get support from the middle. You're likely to pass legislation sooner if you return all the funds, and stronger in the world when all of the money is given back from a carbon fee. It's been that the price is allowed to go higher. Look at British Columbia, $30. It's popular, going to $50. Why? Every year the government produces a report and makes clear to the populace, yeah, here's where the revenues have come in from, but here's where you got it back. Okay, here are the taxes that were reduced as a result. Here are the credits to taxes that you got as a result. And that has seemed to have really worked. Where you look at California, Reggie, Europe, some of the money does not go back. It's a regressive energy tax. Price doesn't get high enough to incent mitigation. That's not good enough for us. We want a price that incents mitigation. So that's our policy. Go ahead, Tony. So what's the reaction been in some of the key progressive communities? Well, there's been some good acceptance from the Green Front, from environmental orgs, and yet many have said, some of the more progressive have said, no, wait a minute, we want some of that money. We want to subsidize renewables. We want to, that kind of thing. We're also, we're a little skeptical of the market. Environmental justice has said, we agree climate change needs to be addressed, but some of that money needs to go to those that are most affected. That's only fair. And in addition, faith-based would like some of the money to go to those most in need. Labor, their priority is a little different. It's good jobs. So in working with these folks, what we have sometimes done is go in and say, here's what we're doing, here's our priority, endorse. And sometimes we get an acceptance, but sometimes we have come across as a little too pushy. So one of the things I want to have us consider is when you look at the values represented by these organizations, they're fabulous, right? These are great people. These are humanitarians, where there's an enormous amount of overlap. They want money for the poor. Turns out our policy, according to the Household Financial Impact Study, really does help the poor. They're concerned about blue-collar jobs. Our policy will create a large number of blue-collar jobs. So we can really appreciate their values, their priorities. And there's a lot of overlap. So go ahead, Tim, to the next. So here's a suggested alternative approach. As opposed to going in, asking for the endorsement, start with appreciation. As we would with an MOC. They have their values, they have their priorities, not so different than ours, and let's make sure that they see first and foremost, that we can really appreciate who they are and the service to humanity that they're trying to provide. Not so hard to do, right? It's interesting. So a month ago, I met Sally Bingham, some of you know, longtime, just remarkable head of Interfaith Power and Light, very strong environmental justice group. She said, I want to tell you what I don't like about your policy. And she went on about, and you listened to her. And I said to her, I have to tell you, Rob showed the data. I made this up, but I said, 90% of our members want you to get everything you want. We completely honor what you're up to and appreciate you and your organization. And it's funny, if I didn't know better, I'd say her listening of me, how she heard me, shifted in that moment. And we do that with the MOCs. Maybe increasingly we really start with the appreciation of who these folks are, their priorities, and our priorities are similar, our ordering's a little bit different. So instead of starting with requests for endorsement, maybe the objective is long-term relationship, partnership. Will you partner with us? Because the day may come, we hope, we think, that legislation comes to the floor that looks a little bit like ours, and we want them to remember us and who we are in the matter, and that we're also standing for humanity. We've just got a slightly different set of priorities. That's all I really wanted to say about that. I want, again, if you're interested in progressive outreach, we want to ramp up the activity this year. Go to community and go to the action teams and look us up and participate with us. That's it for me, and I'm going to have Nick come up and say a couple words, and then.
Good morning, everybody. Yesterday we heard Ambassador Stevenson say that Democrats in Congress will go along with a carbon fee and dividend system, and a core group of Republicans, therefore, will add to that to help pass the bill. And I want to say it would be a mistake for us to take for granted the support of the people on the left, or to think about the people on the left as a megalith, a monolith. Exhibit A in that claim is the defeat of the Washington carbon bill last year, and I'm sure all of you know that one of the reasons, or perhaps the main reason it was defeated, was because of the opposition of environmental groups. Sierra Club and Naomi Klein came out against it, as did Van Jones, who we just heard a little bit about, because they wanted to see more money in clean energy projects and help for low-income communities. Washington took some lessons from that. In fact, at the beginning of this month, their Governor Inslee proposed a $20 tax on carbon emissions, $20 per ton, and a rising price over the years. The revenues, the key question here, would go for clean energy projects, for adaptation measures to help prevent or reduce the effects of flooding and wildfires, and a certain amount of that would go for help for disadvantaged communities to offset the effects of those increased prices. There's a lesson there for us as well, that we need to cultivate relationships with progressives as thoughtfully, as sensitively. I like that. How about a progressive sensitivity training program, as we do with the people, with the conservatives. We need to focus on common goals, and I think you got that point from Jerry. He identified what the goals of a number of progressive groups are. We need to identify those, appreciate them, acknowledge them, and we need to look for opportunities and create opportunities for us to work together on those projects, on that legislation that advances those goals. So I had 2 minutes. There you go. Thank you.